All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining us at today's panel discussion. I'm going to just have some quick words of thanks for Tate Brazos and Bonnie Cantor, who had the brilliant idea to put this all together and assembled our group of panelists that we are so pleased and excited to have here. So I'm going to introduce actually the moderator, and I'm also going to introduce to you one of the students who was involved in last summer's College Summer Institute project that put this exhibition together. So our moderator today is Danielle Aubert, who's a graphic designer. Her work examines materials, methods of production, machines, and labor. She's currently teaching a course, Graphic Design and Social Movements, here at University of Chicago, where she's a professor of practice in the arts. Danielle is the author of the Detroit Printing Co-op, The Politics of the Joy of Printing, Marking the Dispossessed, and 16 months worth of drawings in Microsoft Excel. She's co-author with Lana Kavar, I might have just butchered that. Well, I'll apologize to her in absentia, and Natasha Chandani of Thanks for the View, Mr. Meese. And Emma Yu, who is going to stand up in just a minute, is a third year in the college, majoring in gender and sexuality, fundamentals, and English. So welcome, Emma. Take it away.
Okay, I can. Um, Hi, I'm Emma. I was asked by Daisy to help give an introduction to, I guess, this exhibit that we're in right now. Um, yeah, so I was a part of the team this summer. We were part of the College Summer Institute, and we basically did this project that was organized by Daisy, where Barbara Morgan, who went here in the 60s, and she got her master's here in history, and then she started getting her PhD as well. She basically donated all of her archives to the university. And so our project was to kind of go through her archives, which had a bunch of these posters, and kind of first we archived them for the special collections, and then we kind of organized this exhibit. Um, but yeah, it was really awesome. Barbara Morgan, she was an academic, also like an artist. She was one of the founders of or she was a part of the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective, along with Estelle Carroll, who's here today. Um, and yeah, so I don't know. I guess I can say some of the things that I liked about it. It was really, really awesome to just be surrounded by all these really amazing posters, and we have a lot of reproductions of them up here. Another thing that was really awesome was to just see we had our archives, we had our journals, just to kind of get a I don't know, like a view into the life of Barbara Morgan, who was really into activism, but also really interested in history, and academia was obviously a really big part of her life. And for her, those two things, as is the project of feminism, were inseparable and necessarily linked. And so you can see a lot of the posters around the room. There's one in the back about witch hunters. She was especially interested in medieval history and how women and children were kind of implicated in medieval history, directly informed her artwork and directly informed her activism work. Yeah, that was really awesome. And just generally, I feel like being around these posters, you kind of get a glimpse into this very vibrant and really awesome era of very radical activism. And there were so many collectives and so many like movements happening. There were movements at U Chicago, larger movements in Chicago in general. But yeah, I guess that's it. And now we're in the exhibit that we compiled for it. So yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma, and welcome everybody. And I'm going to pass it right away to Estelle Carroll, one of the founding members of the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective. So welcome.
Okay. Okay. Do I have to hold it this close? Lincoln, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I have my little presentation and I'm going to have to read it because I can't memorize it. But before I do the presentation, I'm going to read you the little bio that I wrote also, so you know what I am, who I am. I'm an artist, graphic designer, website developer, and activist. whose creative work has spanned more than 7 decades. I was a co-founder of the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective in 1970. I was active in the draft resistance movement during the Vietnam War and joined the Chicago Women's Liberation Union in 1969 after a stint in the Women's Radical Action Project at the University of Chicago, because I was a student then. In the 1980s, I worked as a graphic designer at the University of Illinois at Chicago Office of Publications and at Vegetarian Times magazine. From 1982 to 2015, with my partner Bob Simpson, I created hundreds and hundreds of labor and activist cartoons, because I'm also an illustrator, not just a website designer and a graphic designer. So I created cartoons under the name Carol Simpson Productions, and that website is gone now. But the cartoon movement website posted some of them. I am currently the owner of WebTracks Studio, whose clients have included nonprofit organizations, unions, activist groups, magazines, and small businesses. I founded the CWLU Her Story Project in 1999 as a nonprofit with a website dedicated to preserving and sharing women's history and issues. For the past 10 years, I have combined my love of art and design with a passion for organic food gardening and a commitment to community health and wellness. In 2018, I co-founded the Deep Roots Project, a food gardening educational nonprofit that explores soil health, edible gardening innovation methods, and sustainable growing practices. I see my current work as a direct continuation of the values and vision I brought to the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective and the Chicago Women's Liberation Union, Her Story Project. You can view more than 40 of the Women's Graphics Collective posters online on the Her Story Project website, which if you click on the thumbnail of each post of each of the 40 posters, it gets gigantic. And then you can view all of them gigantic, okay? Yeah, so that's my bio. So now I'll read you the presentation. The Chicago Women's Graphics Collective was formed in the fall of 1970, shortly after the founding of the Chicago Women's Liberation Union, which was an umbrella group for many Chicago area feminist groups that had already existed. The Liberation Union was a socialist feminist organization, since socialism was a popular topic for the leftists at the time, and the hippies too. There were other expressions of feminism in the 70s with different philosophies and goals. The Women's Union wanted a just and democratic society for all genders, not just equal rights for women. I think the Women's Union was actually the first socialist feminist group, but I couldn't find any others. Energy just bubbled up to form new groups under the Liberation Union banner. Some of the artists decided that since culture is the key to women's revolution, we needed images and posters. We needed artists and we needed our own art. Without the internet, paper was the only way to share our message in visual art. We needed to be the publicity for this new social change that was about to explode. And in fact, it did explode very soon after that because of all of the newspaper stories, magazine articles, and other media that kind of started from New York, which is my hometown. The Graphics Collective quickly gathered new recruits to our cool idea. And instead of having a studio space where artists created their individual work and shared the equipment and the materials, we wanted a new way to create art collectively. This was fairly unusual at the time, designing and producing posters in a tight-knit group of 2 to 4 female artists. All posters were designed in brainstorming sessions called poster thinks. Usually, one woman started with a theme she was passionate about. Usually, the slogan came first. We tried to design by consensus. Since we sold the posters nationally and internationally, the sales were just tremendous. It became difficult to hand silkscreen so many posters, one color at a time. We asked a local worker-owned print shop to print our most popular posters. The posters were popular because they were so huge, like the ones over there on the wall, beautiful, incredibly affordable, and explained feminism in fun, unique ways. We didn't care about money. The message and the building the feminist movement that mattered. Lots of people knew about our posters in every major city because there were so many women's bookstores and collectives at that time. The posters were in academic offices, homes, women and gender studies programs, and public spaces. Posters were used as picket signs, reproduced in books, magazines, and calendars, and more over the years. We were producing women's power to create and recreate the world. We had articles about us in the mainstream newspapers, the women's press, and the activist media. We would go on poster marketing tours in our little Volkswagen Bug. Um, there was no, we would go on marketing tours. Since there was no internet, of course, we had to physically distribute posters everywhere. We sold posters wholesale to groups who resold them in their cities. We also had a mail order business that used a printed brochure. We shipped the huge posters in mailing tubes. There were different posters for different occasions, like women's health fair or a lesbian event. Most of our posters were about feminist issues, but a few aren't, because we cared very deeply about other social justice issues. The farm workers poster was widely used to promote the Boycott Lettuce campaign, and we tried to form solidarities across race, class, and sexual orientation. We got permission to reprint a poster by a famous Cuban artist about the Vietnamese War and how what imperialism does to third world women. There were very few Black women in the Women's Union and none in the Graphics Collective because identity politics was popular at the time, and we compensated by making coalitions. So, for example, the Women's Union would be in a coalition with Mujeres Latinas en Acción, and we with the Black Panther women on health issues. Although we worked together, we just weren't officially in the same organization. Today on the CWLU Her Story website, there's a huge digital gallery of the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective posters. Plus, there's also an online store of favorite posters as reduced size reprints, 13 by 19 inches, which are the ones on the back table in the windows. So the posters have a second life since I built the CWLU website. They not only get circulated among the next generation through the Her Story website, but they're the financial reason why the entire CWLU Historical Archive can even survive. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you, Estelle. So we're gonna have time at the end for some questions and discussion, but I'll just note the posters in the back are for sale if anybody is interested in getting a print, or you can buy them online. But our next speaker is Lincoln Cushing, who's in California, joining us from California. So I'll just quickly introduce Lincoln. He's taught a class called Archiving a Social Justice Practice at UC Berkeley. And documents, catalogs, and disseminates oppositional political graphics of the late 20th century. His books include Revolución, I don't speak Spanish, Cuban poster art, Visions of Peace and Justice, political posters from Inkworks Press, and Agitate, Educate, Organize American Labor Posters. He was curator for the All of Us or None social justice posters of the San Francisco Bay Area 2012 exhibition at the Oakland Museum of California and continues to catalog the collection. His research and publishing projects can be seen at Docs Populi, Documents for the Public. And very excited that Lincoln is here. He's known
Thank
Estelle for a
you.
while, so yeah, take it away.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Can you all hear me? Thank
Yes.
you all for inviting me here. I'm honored to be the representative male in this group on International Women's Month. And I'm honored to be in the presence of giants like, Estelle. I made my first poster in 1969 about the generation gap as a screen print. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, you can go to the next slide. So I want to give a little bit of the context here because when you look back in history, there's things that we sort of take for granted as OGs that people now don't quite understand. And I want to bring that to the present. One is just the rise of poster art itself. You think of, oh, posters are really a major political medium. Well, they weren't for a long time. The free speech movement, Berkeley's famous effort at, establishing independence for scholarship of thought, didn't have a single poster. This was not a medium that sprang up until the mid 60s. And by the late 60s, it had taken off. And so one of the great things about making posters is you can produce them pretty inexpensively if you screen print them. But then the trick is, how do you distribute them? Posters sitting on the floor of a print shop or on your workshop don't do any good. So you've got to distribute them. It's the Achilles heel of a wonderful political poster. And so you do printed catalogs and you do ads in newspapers and magazines saying, here's the poster, and you send in your check and we'll mail you a poster in a tube. Very clunky, but it was very effective. And then bookstores were also really key. There were a lot of feminist bookstores that sprang up that were crucial to getting these out, and political bookstores. So you could walk in any political bookstore in the long 60s and see posters from the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective on the wall and buy them. And I did. So that's sort of the background on posters themselves as a medium, because they come and go. There was a 20-year period in this country that people didn't really make posters, and we've had them a lot since then. The other aspect that Estelle raised was the role of collective work. And this is huge. This is a really radical step in America. We're all trained to be individualist. We're all trained to lift ourselves up by our bootstraps. And the idea of working collectively was a pretty radical act. And I have here a quote from an ad about the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective in an art publication from '72. And it talks about these poster think sessions and the idea that you have to sort of subsume yourself as an individual for the collective good. And this is not always easy to do as artists. We like to have our view, but at the same time, we want it to be correct. And we want to make sure that we're telling the right story. So the advantage of working collectively is you avoid making idiotic mistakes and spelling words wrong, and it's just an effort at making sure that your message is appropriate and accurate. And there are other examples of collectives that were springing up around the time. Print shops. I was part of a print shop that started in '74 in Oakland and Berkeley called Inkworks Press. Salcedo Press in Chicago, which printed several of the posters for both Chicago Women's Graphics Collective and for Barbara Morgan. Peace Press in Los Angeles. Glad Dave Press was the grand old daddy of this out of Ithaca, New York. So there were print shops that were doing this, but then there were also art collectives, just like Chicago Women's Graphics Collective. The one way in the background was out of Mexico, the Taller de Gráfica Popular. We didn't even really know about this stuff. Most of us didn't. This was so old history. We weren't even aware of this as a model, but it was one of the most important models for collective work, for doing political graphic artwork in the community. La Raza Silkscreen and La Raza Graphics in the Bay Area, See Red Women's Workshop in London. There were workshops in Australia. I mean, this was a big theme, and it was a common effort at how do you work collectively and how do you make it work. It's not easy to do, but it was really an important element in doing this because it wasn't just a bunch of individual artists running out and selling their stuff. The collective aspect was a revolutionary act and undermining sort of capitalist and patriarchal values that we'd all grown up with. So that was really, really crucial. Next slide. So here, what we've got is when Barbara Morgan had come to the Bay Area, she came here just before I did, and she worked with another woman who had started to make posters as well, Jamie Fogel. But Barbara didn't really work in as much of a collective process as Red Pepper as she did with Chicago Women's Graphics Collective. So here's a quote from her. My colleague Michael Rossman interviewed her, and she says, she was doing this stuff and she was trying to express herself personally, but she worked in a much more isolated fashion. And it was not. I think it would contribute to her being unhappy with the years that she was producing work here. And even though there was a lot of collective work going on, and this was a very vibrant art scene, for some reason it didn't connect with her. And I don't quite know why. And there's so much more that we need to learn about this. I mean, when I got here, in the early 80s, I knew her. She was getting posters printed at Inkworks, but I barely knew her. And then all of a sudden she disappeared, and I never knew what happened until recently when her papers were discovered. And there's going to be a lot that we learn about her life trajectory. But these are two posters that was done through Red Pepper, but with Jamie Fogel. Next slide. Here's a couple of exhibitions that she did. This first one here from '78, drawing in her work both at CW, the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective, and Red Pepper. The Goodman Art Building was a really important building in San Francisco that had a bunch of other artists. There was a real powerhouse for people doing political and graphic artwork. And then I helped with an exhibition in '81. There was a group of Bay Area artists, all very active in the political art scene. She was one of them, and we made sure that her work was included. But not long after this, she left the Bay Area, and so she was part of the scene, but she was just never really that connected, and she just, for some reason or another, failed to engage with a lot of the groups, and that's just something we want to learn more about. But most of these organizations and individuals are still around, still doing work. Next slide. I've been trying to compile sort of all the known posters that she did as Red Pepper in the Bay Area. Several of these are from the archives of the Center for the Study of Political Graphics. I'm now on the board. Carol Wells and I have been doing this kind of work forever. And the role of documenting and sharing this work is a whole other element of these materials that were made during the long 60s that for people to know about them, they can't just be sitting in a drawer somewhere in an archive. They've got to be digitized. They've got to be shared in exhibitions. They've got to be included in books. And so this continuing process is the difficult and challenging work that Carol and I are both doing. But it's really essential to make sure that we know our own history. And one of the things you start to reveal as you start to compile these catalog raisonnés of bodies of work is, well, look at the range of work that she did. She did some feminist work, but she did all sorts of stuff. She was doing stuff around, so Nicaragua and, abortion rights and labor, and gentrification. Political artists jump on what are the current topics. And so this reveals a really wide range of subjects that were all very important and popular at the time. And so it's quite possible that we'll run across more of these. This kind of work, you're never done, but this is the first real step at pulling this stuff together. And it's been rewarding to sort of see all these in one spot. You can go to the next slide. So here's some of the posters that when she was living here, she was having them printed at a familiar shop, which was Salcedo in Chicago, her hometown. And so these were 3 posters that she did through Salcedo, which was one of the handful of new left shops that survived many, many years and produced. We all collectively produced thousands of posters. And for those of you unfamiliar with the media, I mean, if you're doing 100 or 200 posters, you can screen print them. But if you want to do a large edition, you've got to offset it. And the cost per unit is way down. You can sell them very affordably. You can do much more detailed work. It's the screen printing and offset printing are complementary, but they serve slightly different needs. These were offset ones done through Salcedo. You can go to the next one. So here's ones that she did at Inkworks. And these were, one was a quote from Emiliano Zapata about the land belongs to people who work it. One was about a cancer is a corporate business. And, she was really good at helping to use posters to tell not just history, but to tell political events. I mean, all the people I know that really care deeply about posters find them to be absolutely compelling tools at teaching about issues and about history. And in very many cases, a poster about a particular event may be the only record we have about that event. So they complement other media in helping us to share our own history and to learn more about it. I mean, I love this one about stop nuclear power, don't pee in my jeans. I mean, to use humor and satire is a very powerful tool. But these were 3 that we printed at Inkworks, and we were really happy to do this. She was one of many, many, many artists and collectors that we printed for. But we were there for her, and we did these. Last slide here, which is, this is one of my personal most empowering and beautiful posters, I think, of the long 60s. I've adored this poster. I've had it on my wall forever. We had it on the wall at Inkworks. It's a powerful poster, and it's a liberating poster, and it's a gorgeous poster. So I thank the Chicago Women's Graphic Club for producing it. And here's an example of what a mail order catalog was like. The first ones were black and white, then they got to color. But this is how we shared the posters we had, and they were available for sale. And for those of you who may not be aware, there's a great video of the Chicago Women's Graphics Collective talking about the making of a poster and about sort of how do we make sure that we tell the story right, and bringing in women who are familiar with farm work so that when we show farm workers, we're talking about boycotting lettuce, we don't make something up, we show something that's actually relevant. And so it's a great little video that's now available online. It used to be a DVD that you could buy. Now it's available for free. So I'll end there because I want to hope we have more questions and comments, but I'm really grateful that this ongoing history is being shared. And ideally, as with all of the work I'm doing now, I want to make sure that this stuff empowers the next generation of artists and they go, wow, that was a great idea, or that was a great visual approach. And I want to see these carried forward into the future because this is not just ancient history in a drawer, this lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lincoln. That was great. So we're very lucky and excited to have Sarita Hernandez here for the last presentation. So Sarita is a teaching artist, oral historian, pie maker, garden caregiver, and print zine maker from Salvadorexican Califas based in Chicago. Sarita is co-founder of Marimacha Monarca Press, a queer and trans artist familia based in Chicago's South Side since 2017. Sarita is part of the printmaking faculty at the Hyde Park Art Center, just nearby, an advisory board member for Neighbors for Environmental Justice and for EJ, and a garden caregiver for the McKinley Park Community Gardens mutual aid beds. They're interested in artistic interventions with the historical archive and imagining alternative forms of social documentation, preservation, and activation of everyday histories, survivals, and resistances. Sarita makes sex-positive, pleasure, and plant-based pies and cakes in McKinley Park. So I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you, everyone, for presenting and sharing about your work. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarita. And I'm just going to share today a little bit about some work that I do and also some collective work that I do. So, as you mentioned, right, these are some images of me being my pies and a protest print. That's me as a baby. I printed that with Huff Print, who are like my printmaking godparents, Liz and Gabe, shout out. And then we have some Huitlacoche on the left there or on the right, I suppose. And so I'm also a gardener. I work in gardens and I volunteer in them. I really got into supporting gardens just through being an artist and being really interested in like monarch conservation and the symbols in the natural environment. But I was like, I can't just make art about this, you know, it's important to care. I'm primarily silkscreen is kind of my jam. I've been printmaking since 2012. I started at Taller Arte del Nuevo Amanecer, which is in Woodland, California. And that's also when I started my teaching journey in 2013. And then obviously with that comes relief, and I actually learned mostly relief here when I came to Chicago from my amazing collaborator and dear friend Selva Safiro Luna when we were both in an after-school arts program teaching at Richards Career Academy in Back of the Yards, where everything started. So as I mentioned, right, I'm Salvadorian and Mexican, and I come from a family that are farmers and gardeners and healers. And a lot of my work has to do with kind of looking in the archive, reflecting on my own family's history and how those familial histories connect with colonial violence and state violence, etc. And so these images here are one of them. The one that says Queersalis is actually a print that I made in my kitchen studio back in like 2019, 2018. And Marimacha Monarca Press, which is a collective I'm a part of, we would just print in my kitchen and use the bathroom as a dark room in the middle of the night and hide all the lights to have a light, safe environment. And then over time, we got our studio in the clock tower in McKinley Park and became neighbors with Huff Print at the time, who's another amazing printmaking duo. And they are in Bridgeport now. And so recently I made this print called Hijas de Migrante contra la Migra. And it's an image of me and my older sibling saying, come on, girl, we're kidnapping ICE. And so again, it's just kind of to like give voice to like the youth, the inner child within, and reclaim a lot of power that is taken away from small ones and youth, especially with all the horrifying things happening around us constantly, not just now, but since many forevers ago. And here's a print that this is an exercise that I do with my printmaking students at the Hyde Park Arts Center. We do protest poster making, so it's like a mix of relief and silkscreen. And we have this discussion where we talk about the issues that we're passionate about, and then we learn through demoing. So as we're learning how to engage with the medium, we're also collaboratively creating a poster and zine together. So this is actually a relief zine that's opened up all the way. So when you close it, it's a booklet of protest prints that you can just slip in your pocket and take out at a protest. And then this is the iconic photo of Marimacha Monarca Press, which is really just my queer fam and I. We decided to make art together and teach. And so here we have Selva Safiro Luna on the left, and then David Escobedo on the right. And there's several other members as well. But here was our coming out in 2017. at the Grabadolandia that Instituto Gráfico Chicago puts on, which is another amazing Latina printmaking collective in Chicago. And this is really where we got connected to so many people. It was really a transformational event for us to come out and say, we're here in queer and we're going to make prints and we're a collective and we're going to keep on teaching and share what we know. We don't know everything, but what we know, we're happy to share and learn and continue to exercise. And that day we actually were neighbors with Huff Print, or we were in the same group, and we got to really like that friendship and relationship really flourished. And so here's an image of us at our 6-year anniversary, doing a celebration of being 6 years together. And this is at Huff Print's new space in Bridgeport. And you can see kind of the collection of our prints. They're all such different styles. But we all sort of really complement each other. Like, I'm definitely not a perfectionist, and there's a lot of people in the collective that are. And it's just wonderful to have that balance, because I think I'm just like, let's try it. Let's just try it. Let's print it. Let's put it out there. And then other folks are very much like measuring, making sure things are precise. And I think it's beautiful to have that sort of contrast with each other. And so some of our work is we do a lot of pop-up printmaking. We will pop up in the parks, in the libraries, kitchens, bathrooms, just a lot of different places to do protest art and print and have the communities that we're working with interact with them. So here was a print made by myself and Remy Guzman and printed with Jose Rosa that day. We were at the McKinley Park Community Garden for Harvest Festival, and this was in 2023. And so we had made a zine about Plantitas Migrantes, which was like a zine talking about how seeds migrate and how they fly. And it was a bilingual Spanish-English zine that we did for the public library in La Vita. And then one of these images we converted into this poster to address what was happening and what's continuing to happen and what has happened throughout time, and to kind of localize it within the specific place that we were in, which was McKinley Park. So there we have, if you can see, corn, beans, and squash, but they're like the queer non-binary siblings. They're not the three sisters or the three queer siblings. And it's just, again, to make connections between the natural environment and how we support each other, how everyone has all these different skill sets and ways that they can show up for each other. And then this is a print that I made, a relief that is inspired by kind of carvings that you see on in agaves in La Ciudad de Mexico. I kind of like added protest messages on there. This is sort of an ode to some land stewards that I really admire and that have taught me so much in my own gardening experience and journey, and also a lot of environmental justice organizers that I work with. And then here we have some collaborations between Selva Zafiro Luna and myself. And Selva is like one of my favorite people to teach with. Like, we've been we've been friends and teaching since that afternoon in Richards, and it has been such a beautiful friendship. And we often will collaborate on prints together. We often say yes to way too many things together. And this print in particular, I wanted to point out because this was like a very we didn't necessarily get in trouble, but we sort of, it was a little spicy. And so this print in particular we made for the DNC when it was in Chicago in 2024. And we just really, again, wanted to make connections between issues happening everywhere around us and also locally. So here we have images of a check, right, saying that the Democratic Party is funding the genocide, right? And then next to it, it's an image of matte asphalt, which is a major polluter in my neighborhood in McKinley Park. And so it feels really important to make those connections between our shared struggles and also show that there is liberation and resistance to that as well. And then this, like I mentioned before, doing art around the natural environment is important, but also so is gardening and feeding the soil and making sure we are actively caring for the symbols that we use so much, right? So this is our seed paper piñata that we worked with Neighbors for Environmental Justice, where we made a like 7-foot seed paper piñata that we then basically kind of treated like a gigantic seed bomb. And it was at a beautiful community event for Neighbors in Nature. And Maria Spot Lemis and Maya like invited us to come and experiment on this project that we didn't know how it was gonna go. And it happened, and we've done 2 iterations of it, and the gardens have grown, and pollinators have come, and it's there. And it's a really wonderful experience to see everyone kind of invest so much energy in the building of something so big and not know if the seeds are actually going to germinate, right? And also be able to continue to engage with the monarch caterpillar and butterfly and some of the symbolism that we do in our work. And then almost to close out, these are just some images of what it looks like when we pop up at different events. Everyone loves a pop-up printmaking event outside, but it's a lot of work, y'all. Like, you have to bring the studio outside. But it's really wonderful because we get to make connections with like elders in the community, with little 2-year-olds, right? And people speaking multiple languages, right? And just figuring it out together. And this is one of my most recent prints for Valentine's Day, called Melting Ice Never Felt So Hot. Again, just really trying to resist a lot of this violence happening around us, and like try to create some like joy and like sexy resistance all at the same time. And to the right, we have our recent collaboration with the Chicago Dyke March Collective, to kind of talk about the history of surveillance in our communities and how dykes are always taking things down, and I also make pies, as you mentioned, but I'm short on time, so I'll just end there. But thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great. This beautiful work and so exciting to see. So we have some time for questions. And I wanted to, there's actually like a lot of interesting overlap, well, unexpected overlap maybe for me, which is the between both of your works, which is the relationship to gardens. And so I kind of wanted to get into that, but I did want to take the opportunity to ask the first question of Estelle, which is to ask if you could talk a little bit specifically about this Sisterhood is Blooming poster. I really appreciated actually all of the context that you gave about the background of your work. But I was thinking just to spend a little bit of time about this specific image, just because it's, well, first it kind of connects back to gardening and blooming, and maybe it can kind of lead into some questions for Sarita as well. But that particular poster, I think is one that, for me anyway, I just know it, but I don't know why I know it. It's so familiar, like I've seen it around, and and I think that some of these posters from this time period, they kind of become like atmospheric, like you're kind of, and I never really thought about like who made it or what, and then here you are, you made it. So I was gonna kind of ask a question, if you could talk a little bit about, I was interested in what you said about when you came up with posters, you would start from the slogan often in terms of developing the visuals. If you could talk about what you remember about, the production of this poster, but also how it's resonated. And I don't know I know that Sarita is very familiar with the work of your collective as well, but if we could just sort of start there.
Okay. It's a very early poster. It was in the first year and a half or so. We were just starting out, and we were learning silk screening. And we specifically created a design with the slogan that was easy to silk screen. Okay, that was the goal. The number of words, the number of colors, 2 colors, real simple. And we work together in twos and threes. I think that I did this one with mostly just one other person, and I actually cannot remember, unfortunately, which of the women it was that we worked together on that. But then we got a couple more together to help us print it, because to do the old-fashioned silkscreen printing takes a lot of people, especially when the prints are so large. And it kind of got very popular. It's our most popular poster. We've sold it all over the world. I think it's in one of the major museums in Washington, D.C. I think it might be the Smithsonian, but I think the Smithsonian has the farm workers poster. So it must be in, and then it's also in a museum in London. So it's, people just relate to it really strongly. They love it. And so, I mean, we couldn't keep up with printing it. We just had to print it like by the hundreds.
And what else? Just to clarify one question about Salcedo Press. So, because Lincoln mentioned that some of those posters were then offset printed. So is that what would happen, for instance, with this? Like you would get it? Okay, good to know. Well, I wanted to open it up to questions from everybody here. If anybody has a question, otherwise, I have more. There's a question online.
Hello. So the question online was specifically for Sarita. I would like to hear, Sarita, about the challenges and strengths of doing this work both alone and in collaboration. But I think that's something that all of the panelists can address.
Wow, that's such a good question. Thank you so much. I mean, there's conflict, it's hard, and I don't think we need to run away from it when there's conflict. I think we've been together for like 9 years now. It's been 9 years that we've been a collective, and, we endured the onset of the pandemic, navigating different boundaries, even to this day, right? And I think you know how a lot of people will like notice like artist couples or whatever, stuff like that, right? Or siblings that are artists, right? Our queer familia definitely thrives on our relationship to each other. Like I don't think it's possible for us to do this specifically, what we do specifically, right, Chal? I don't know. I feel like Chal is here, Chal Trans, part of the collective. But it really is like our relationship, because we'll be eating dinner and be like, oh damn, we still have to make that stencil for the pop-up on Friday. And be like, oh, it's okay, let's make it really quick. But it's like, and I was talking about this with Liz Bourne from Huff Print, how like it's just there's something really special about like having your partner or your collective be very much in relationship with you as you're navigating, because it's like, yeah, you care about the work and what you do and you have these shared values, but you really care about each other. Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard, it's hard. But also I'm so grateful for like the abundance of skills and energy and different astrological signs in our collective that really balance out a lot of the work that we do. And we could still improve all the time, of course. But yeah, I think it's just been a lot of patience and listening, fighting, loving, experimenting. That's my perspective, at least. And then as far as like the stuff that I do alone, I don't ever really feel like I do alone. Like it's definitely, there's always, so I mean, even today, like my sibling drove me, like it's always, there's always somebody. So I don't feel like I'm ever alone. But I'm just really grateful for all the homies out here.
Would you like to comment to answer about working collectively versus working alone? How does?
Okay. I love working collectively. I get lonely when I'm working alone. So I always have to figure out a way to get other people around to work with, but that's not always possible. So, so I usually accomplish the solution by starting a group of some sort. So, after the graphics collective ended for me, which was in 1975, they continued until 1983 without me. Then I had to get another little group together, which was I just got a job and I was part of that. I was a graphic designer for many, many, many years. And the thing about graphic design is that it's expected that you work collectively. So that kind of fit in really well. So like a lot of artists who are not fine artists, they're working collectively normally. That's life. That's the way it really goes. You know, you work with the writers and you work with the editors and you work with the bosses and whatever. So that that worked. And then I formed another little collective of two with my husband, Robert Simpson, uh, in the 80s, starting in the 80s. And he was an incredible activist and history teacher and an amazing creative person in every respect. And so he decided he wanted to write the cartoon gags and I should draw them. So that's what I did. So the Carol Simpson cartoons lasted from 1980, mid 80s, 1983 or 84 to 2015. And we had a website called the Carol Simpson Productions, which I'm sorry it kind of fell apart, really upset about that. But that was because Bob died. And I had to take care of him for 7 years by myself in our house. And so what I really would like to do is to resurrect the Carol Simpson cartoons, because the activist cartooning is an important part of activist art. Most of the cartoons, though, that we did are generalized. And in other words, they're not like most cartoonists, like in the New Yorker or in the newspaper or something, they will do cartoons about the latest news coming out. But we didn't do that. We did cartoons about the bigger issues that will never go away. So when you go back to look at them, they're still current because we never solved the problems that we had back then. So so that's why I really wanted to bring back all those cartoons. And I actually have, I know I have 815 cartoons in storage on my computer. And I just I need to get some of the interns from, I already discussed that with the gals here. I need to bring back the interns to help me get the website up again. They'll love it. It's so much fun. We use Squarespace, this wonderful website development tool. Anyway, so and then after that, I was gardening because I wanted to commemorate my mom, Ruthie Carroll, who was a professor of nutrition and made us eat healthy food from when we were tiny 5-year-olds, So like the healthy food thing is ingrained in my brain. So I had to get only organic food to commemorate Ruthie. So I couldn't afford it all. So I had to learn how to grow a garden, but I didn't know how to grow a garden because we were urban people and we lived in New York. That's my hometown. And we didn't know how to garden. So I had to learn how to garden. And then I had to gather all these people around from where I live now in Oak Park to help me do the Deep Roots Project, which is a group that teaches gardening using a special new method that uses organic, high nutrient, high microbe compost instead of soil, because my theory, and it worked, and it came from a horticulturist who's with the University of California, that you grow in 100% compost, because the above ground plants, not the root plants hate that high nutrient compost. And now I'm in the process of trying to develop the soil that goes with the root plants, but that's a whole nother story. So then so that we wanted a method to grow food that you put the seed in the ground, you put the seedling in the ground, you water it on the right schedule, and then you ignore it for the rest of the season. And it works, because the high nutrient compost and the high nutrient worm castings, which instead of fertilizer, has this way of feeding the nutrients to the plant better than any human could ever do it. So I said, okay, fine, microbes, you do it. I don't have time for it anymore. So that was it.
Okay, yeah, great. And this is like printing and growing food. Yeah, amazing. Do we have any questions from here? Yeah, I think Daisy will bring you them.
Hi, this question is for, okay. This question is for Lincoln. So now that we see that activism has moved for like a more digital space, where do you see the future of archiving going forward? Because now activism takes place on like Instagram posts, and like that's how people know where to meet, and that's where they know when to meet. So is that going to be archival work, just the cloud and like organizing your laptop, or how's that going to be forward? If you have any thoughts on that.
Well, first, let's talk about posters themselves, the physical objects, because they're not going to go away. I mean, a lot of what I do is I focus on digitizing content of things that were printed on paper, as opposed to born digital content. And by sharing the objects that are printed on paper, I've digitized them. They're available on online catalogs. The Oakland Museum of California has a lot. The Center for the Study of Political Graphics is almost finished digitizing their entire collection. As these become available online, they get inspiring. They become inspiring to other artists. But so the way that we actually digitize them and catalog them and store them is all pretty technical, but it's not rocket science. But it's a huge step from something sitting in a drawer to being able to share it electronically. But posters themselves are not going away. There's a lot of situations, as we just saw with the presentation earlier, that posters play an important role even in this age of YouTube videos and digital media. Most artists now will do both. You will make an image that ends up in Beirut because it's online, but also it's on the streets of your local neighborhood. And if you're doing some organizing that's really local, if your neighborhood is fighting gentrification, the best thing you can do is 50 posters splattered around town that gets people to a meeting. They play an important role. And also, as objects, they're a fundraiser. People forget that this is a way to raise money. People will spend $25 for a poster. They walk home with it. I mean, when I was at Occupy Oakland 2011, the line for people to get a poster was longer than the line for people to get food. People want an object that represents their moment in history. And they go home, and that's on their wall in a year or 10 years or 50 years. And they're proud that they were there in that moment. But they also raised money. The Black Panthers had tables with posters out. That's how they raised money. So they play multiple functions that aren't repeated and taken over by digital media. So current artists do both. I hope that helps.
I think we had a question from online.
That's on. Yes. This is from Natalia, who was actually part of the project. A recurrent theme in all three presentations was the importance of community and a kind of activist landscape circuit. Could you talk a bit about how that has changed across time, or how that ecosystem has changed during your time doing this work?
I think thinking about the role of community, maybe even over the 9 years that you've had your collective, could be. and in different places. Yeah, you're thinking, yeah. Do you have thoughts about this, Estelle? You have to hold the mic. I can hold it.
No. I don't know. Which part of this should I start with?
Well, I can ask. I had a similar question, so maybe I'll try to rephrase it in a way, because I had a similar question actually, more with maybe with both of your practices, but like thinking specifically about about your group here. Like, were you connected to, so there's the community in terms of like the neighborhood and the people around, or people around Chicago who may have known of your work, but then also were you connected politically to like any kind of like organized political groups, where you were like, okay, this group is asking for posters or making things for this particular function or this event. Yeah. And what was the relationship, I guess, of your collective to the people? Was that like sort of a porous relationship? Were they sort of helping with the printing? Were you all attending meetings or events of these other groups? Like, how did that kind of interface happen?
Well, I don't have a total answer because there were so many people in the Women's Graphics Collective, and they had connections to so many different organizations, and I don't exactly know who they met with and who they collaborated with and how often, and were these just casual requests for a one-time poster? I don't really know how to, it was just so much. It was just different. It was a lot of people. And then people kept coming through the graphics collective, all those years that I was there, changing, people would leave, other people would come. I don't know. It was just all over the place.
But I think that itself is also interesting to think about, because I think the thing about printing specifically, and maybe gardening also, is you do it also builds community. Like you're working side by side with people, and so you're kind of passing things back and forth. And so I don't know if you.
Well, I don't know. The gardening thing is a whole nother ball game. I mean, community of gardening is different than a community of artists, totally different. I mean, it's nature is their own. I mean, I don't know. They're both wonderful. I always say I combine art and gardening because, and I call it edible landscapes. And then you make this gorgeous like planting system with flowers and natives and all the stuff, and then mixed in here and there are the vegetables that you're eating. I don't.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I always feel like I learned printmaking from the garden, honestly. Like the birds just like stepping in the mud, seeing their little imprints, or like the chlorophyll prints. But to your question, yeah, I mean, similar to you, so like everybody has their own connections, and we sort of have a core group of people, but people have come and gone throughout the 9 years, and with that, our connections, and so a lot of times, like many times, we might be on the dance floor and someone comes up, is like, hey, do you want to do this print? Okay, yeah, let's do it. It's for this event, whatever. Or it'll be, at someone's job, like in education, be like, oh, we want to do this arts festival. Like, do you think someone could come? Right. And then we get together and we do a similar thing to the poster things. So that was really cool to find out about your process. Thank you for sharing, where we like sit down and we're like, okay, what are we trying to do? And then quick, we go, we figure it out. Some of them take longer than others, but yeah, I think for the most part, it's like I really love that about our collective, is that we're not fixed. It's very much like, if you are a comedian, which we do have several comedians in our collective, and you need to step away to put more time into that, you can, right? And then if you need a print great. We're out here. We're doing prints, you know, or, you know, other people are starting like a teaching license, right? And they have to take some time, but then they still need access to the print studio and like sharing curriculum, talking out things. And so as we change and shift, so does the collective, and who we work with changes based on how we're moving, right? And so I think that's really beautiful about our collective is that we're not trying to like stay in this thing. I think for sure we know that we care about our community and try to like meet everyone how we can where we're at too. But we of course cannot do everything, but what we bring what we can, I think, and try to like share and exchange.
I just thought of one other thing I forgot. We just recently at Deep Roots Project started a collaboration with the local schools. So the teacher has a garden. The school has a garden, and the students garden in it, and they learn how to do it there. And then they use our method in our special new soil thing that we do. And then I have these huge, I have a dozen of these huge posters that I made about our method. They're I call them the infographics, and they're for teaching people all the different parts of the gardening system. You know, how you make the microbes happy, and then you make the plants, then they make the plants happy, and then all the stuff, and how it's like an integrated ecosystem. So I have all these huge graphics, but I originally made them for adults, but these are kids. So that's a problem. So I'm gonna have to rewrite the whole thing in kid language, which I can do. I've been practicing, and that's another way of doing it.
Thanks. So we have time for one more question. There's some questions online, but I wanted to give it first to the room in case there's anything here. Anybody wanted to ask? Okay, why don't we do one last question from the internet?
All right, from the internet. I have a question for Sarita that maybe Estelle also wants to address. I've been a Mary Macho Monarca Press fangirl for years. It's great to see the beauty and power of some of your more recent collaborations with Selvo Zafiro Luna. It seems to me that your work together is growing. Can you speak to how two artists or an art collective's work can grow together artistically and maybe also politically over time, or how your work with Luna has grown and developed?
That's such a wonderful question. I think about this a lot, like my relationship with Selva Safiro Luna. And if you're online, Selva, if you have anything to say, feel free. But it's been so beautiful to grow with this person. Oh my God. Like they're probably one of the first really, really close friends that I made in Chicago who's like queer and Latina and an artist and just a hater of like mainstream society, you know, and a badass teacher. Like Selva is one of my favorite teachers. Like the way that that fool knows how to like bring students together, and their artwork is just so phenomenal. And that fool is also very like precise and perfection, you know, and I love that about them. And I feel inspired to be like that, even though I'm very much not. But I think it's been really, really beautiful to grow with Selva. I we've gotten to be in the classroom together. I mean, we started at Cook County Jail together teaching zine making before Maria Macha Monarca Press was even a thing. And then they so generously welcomed me into their queer familia, you know, because I moved here alone 11 years ago. And yeah, I mean, talk about someone opening their doors constantly. I mean, that fool is so generous, and you can see it in their work. You can see how they work and engage with community around them, and how they're just so inviting. And that definitely, I feel like I've seen so much growth from Selva, and even in our own relationship, we've had fights, we've broken up as friends, but we've also had repair. And it's been wonderful to get to create prints with them and kind of see us get really spicy. Like, I'm really proud of that DNC print. I think we were really burnt out at the time, and there were so many friends too that like talked us through that process as well. But like to actually complete it with Salva during a moment that was really difficult, because of all the terrible things happening. It's just great that like at the end of the day, me and Selva can still be super tired and see each other and be like, okay, I'm committed, you're committed. We're gonna like follow through on this thing, because we care. Um, but yeah, I think we've gotten more spicy. I think the depth of our work has, like, especially with regards to the natural environment, has really like pushed a lot of boundaries too. And just, I mean, because nature is trans, nature is queer, and so it's just been wonderful to see our own identities flourish and develop as we're also making work together, and having these conversations. There's so much more to say, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think that's a great note to end on. But thank you so much to Estelle, Sarita, and Lincoln for your presentations. And you have to save all of your work for people like Lincoln and myself to archive later in the future. And thank you so much for being here. Good night, everybody.